Tron Uprising was the animated add-on to Tron in an effort to build the larger world of the grid set after the events of the original Tron movie and before the most recent film, Tron Legacy. Whether you're a big fan of the Tron franchise or not, here you can enjoy a solely unique story that can bring you into the world of Tron in a whole new way. Tron Uprising is genuinely one of the nicest stylized shows. Disney XD had a knack for having amazing shows that came along with a unique look and slick animation, so it's no surprise that Tron follows that as well. It is so deeply written, drenched in both narrative lore and peaking neons from every angle. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe because today we are entering the grid to explore the short-lived world of Tron Uprising.
Maybe we should go say hi, you know, thank you.
I am a massive fan of the Tron series. Both the original movie and sequel movie I enjoy a lot, and the Tron Evolution video game, it may be a lot better than people gave it credit for. And I just released a video talking about it over on my gaming channel, check it out after this video. Tron Uprising had my attention from its original announcement as I was still riding high in the excitement of Disney putting more focus on Tron after all this time, and wanting to expand the ideas from the original source material with the technology and mediums we have today to play within. Don't get me wrong, the visuals of the original Tron are downright charming, but I love what the world of Tron can really be with today's visuals. But when it comes to the medium of animation, ideas that seem impossible can be made. The world of Tron is able to be fleshed out here and look incredibly gorgeous, with a sleek look to heavily shaded and vividly neon 3D animation, with Robert Valley being behind the character designs of the show. If the visuals ring any sort of bell for you at all, that's because you can see Robert's work in a bunch of other projects from the Gorillaz. The main director of the show, Charlie Bean, had a vision for the look of the show, playing around in the CG space. So working with someone like Robert was a no-brainer to find that stylized look, but also working with Alberto Mielgo, who has gone on to work on massive projects like Love, Death, and Robots, as well as Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. They even went as far as to work with Daniel Simon to perfectly translate the look of the vehicles and ships within the world of Tron into the show. That's great because Daniel specifically was the one behind the designs of the vehicles and ships for Tron Legacy. This played a huge role in the recognition the show received when it came to awards, being nominated for 4 Annie Awards and 1 Primetime Emmy, with Robert winning an Annie for character design and television production, and Alberto winning an Annie for production design in a television series, as well as him winning the Emmy for Outstanding Individual Achievement in Animation for art direction. Mix that in with the well-choreographed fighting and some world-expanding cinematography, Tron Uprising stands out with a level of quality that speaks to how much care the developers of the show, Edward Kitsis and Adam Horowitz, had when working with what had previously been established for this world. The expanding of what happens on the grid, what other major events happened in this place between movies, the battle for freedom, the control of perfection, and what it means to be born. Officially, Tron Uprising was announced around the time that Legacy came out in December 2010. We got a pretty early look into what this show would be thanks to a featurette on the Blu-ray and DVD release of the film on April 5th, 2011, titled First Look at Tron Uprising, the Disney XD Animated Series. It was a teaser trailer that did its job at teasing. It would show off that this would take place before the events of Tron Legacy, and focus on 2 things. 1, some sort of uprising, and 2, that Tron was looking for the next Tron, showing off an impressive cast list and a peek at the visual style of the show. From there, a couple months later at San Diego Comic-Con, Disney showed off the same trailer along with some concept art and our look at the character models for the show. Originally, the first episode of the show was meant to be a 10-part miniseries prelude to the first episode, but instead was turned into a full episode that ran 31 minutes in total as a preseason special that was released on May 18th, 2012, a few weeks before the show would officially air on June 7th. But this episode is seen as the first episode of the show as it establishes a lot of the setup going into the series, and works better than a 10-part segmented introduction. The ideals and thought-provoking aspects of Tron were all in mind when creating this show, and wanted to expand on both aspects of that and still giving you some visual flair that makes Uprising one of the most underrated shows ever made for Disney, and one of the best spin-offs that directly impacts a franchise in a positive and intriguing way. Plus, the soundtrack to the show is really great. Tron Legacy is heavily remembered for giving us one of the best soundtracks of all time, and one of the best Daft Punk albums of all time. I, to this day, still still have the full Tron Legacy soundtrack on my playlist, always in rotation. Here, Joseph Trapanese, who worked with Daft Punk to arrange their score for Tron Legacy, took on the role of scoring the show, which I think was a brilliant move to invoke the sounds and overall feeling that made Daft Punk's score for the film so memorable, and breathed life into a perfectly captured digital sound for a digital world. But there's something about Tron Uprising that really bugs me. With all of this level of quality and talented team behind it, with how high review scores and beloved by those who did watch it, why is it considered a hidden gem, underrated, forgotten, when it holds the weight of the name Tron on it?
We're free. It's the only reason we're being hunted.
Tron Uprising, brand new next.
Inside the grid, or this computer-built virtual world, the people here are called programs, in which we follow our new lead character, Beck, voiced by Elijah Wood, as he becomes the apprentice and hopeful eventual replacement for the original Tron once he fully can't be the protector of the grid anymore. And before I start building up this lore with you all, this show starts bridging some missing lore gaps that we see the end results within Tron Legacy. For example, one of the major players here is Clue, the program that Flynn, the creator of the grid, tasked with helping him create the perfect system, which would make the overseeing and nurturing of the world a lot less of a Herculean task. While programs are more akin to AI as they were created, what really sets up the divide were the ISOs, which is short for isomorphic algorithms. Similar to a miracle, the ISOs weren't code that were previously written to exist but somehow evolved to be in existence from the grid itself. Somehow, life finds a way. Now, because there are characters like this that are from the movie, and their stories play out mostly there, they aren't per se the main focus ever in the series. Clue's involvement in Uprising is minimal. His presence is pretty much felt throughout it though, and I'll touch back on Clue later. Beck here wasn't too out of the ordinary in comparison to anyone else. In the background of the grid, a regime change was in motion, where Clue was taking over, and Tron was believed to be dead. None of this really mattered all that much to the average program, but Beck, after seeing one of his closest friends get de-rezzed by one of Clue's guards, he found new purpose in fighting back against them. Through his actions and not trying to get caught, he ends up running into a beaten-up Tron. He wasn't dead after all. Well, I knew that, I saw Tron Legacy. Beginning their partnership and claiming Beck as Tron as well, for moral purposes and to prepare to pass down the torch. But our main antagonist that they're up against in the show is not Clue, because again, we need him for the movie, which this takes place before. Instead, we have General Tesler, voiced by Lance Henriksen, who, under Clue's command, oversees and pretty much fully controls Argon City, the main setting for the show. He is presented as a hate-filled ideologist that will not hesitate to de-res anyone who stands in his way or who defies the rules and way of life set in place. He's menacing but has the confidence behind his words that convinces the programs that live in the city that what's really bad is the renegade causing all of this mayhem, making others believe that the hero of our story is truly the one who makes life harder and scarier all around. But it's obviously quite the opposite. Tron is training Beck. This world, the grid, needs Tron, or the belief in Tron once more. At the baseline, this is our story. We get to meet a whole cast of new characters that lead some complex intermingling storylines that result in some interesting twists, turns, and detours that make the grid such a tangible place with rich development. On the other hand, we get these smaller connections to the overall major plots that would chronologically take place next in Tron Legacy. What's really strong here is how the show handles and builds their characters, how they fit into this world and interact with each other. Beck at first is this pretty chill, kinda funny goofball that enjoyed spending time with his friends and working at Abel's garage, repairing the various vehicles we'd see throughout the grid. Post becoming dubbed the Renegade, he disguises himself often in Tron's suit. This provides the illusion of protection as well as that Tron isn't dead, but leaves people believing in either that or that there is an imposter out there pretending to be him, which is an easy tale to spin for someone like Tesler to do. Tron himself is actually voiced by the original Tron live-action actor, Bruce Boxleitner, which helps build the authenticity of this show to feel so much more connected to the established universe. He is more serious than pretty much every other character in this show, with his mind always worried about the freedom the programs throughout the grid should have, and staying true to Flynn's vision for this place. He has an interesting relationship here in the show with Beck. Sometimes it's as solid as you'd think, especially early on, but faith in Tron and his past decisions decisions do cause some rifts between Beck and Tron, which in part may be due to some outside controlled actions manipulating the situation. A lot of this stems from a side plot that brings in a character that I found the most interesting, Cyrus, voiced by Aaron Paul, which gives us a look at a previous chosen disciple of Tron that went bad and didn't work out. We see how Beck deals with this and how Cyrus in general comes into play for the rest of the season. While it kinda starts feeling like a side quest, it was interesting enough that any focus on this character instantly became one of the cooler aspects we explored, especially when some intense life or death decisions are at the hands of Cyrus that get blamed on the Renegade, hurting Beck's personal life with the ones he loves. It made it all feel that much more compelling. And speaking of friends, let's talk about the friends. There's Mara, voiced by Mandy Moore, who works with Beck and currently believes in the Renegade's actions being just, to fight back, but due to manipulation, even has her faith shaken in the true intentions of the so-called good guy. Also at the garage working with them is Zed, voiced by Nate Cordy, who is pretty timid and more worried about the results that come from the Renegade's actions in the most negative sense from the oppressors. He cares a lot for Mara and would even team up to help the Renegade when Mara's safety is at stake. As far as Abel, voiced by Reginald VelJohnson, he is the owner of the garage everyone is working at and acts as this fatherly or mentor-esque figure. His story and relationship with those who work there play into some of the most shocking and dramatic moments in the show later on that truly test the bonds and relationships of friends. Cutler, voiced by Lance Riddick, is a pretty interesting character that gives us a look into how powerful the Super Recognizer is in changing this helpful good guy that befriends Beck, but after being captured is completely changed into this lethal fighter, and even under this control, how there could be a path away from it, possibly. But there is something that I think sold this show for a lot of people, and that was having the character of Cora, who would be one of the main characters of Tron Legacy. She shows up in a smaller role, mainly to tie things into the movie, but she is still voiced by Olivia Wilde. While if you take her character out of the show, it really doesn't change too much here. It still shows that in the background, the story beats of Legacy are still building up, fleshing out the grid as a real world and cluing us into the timeline for the events here between the movies. But let's talk more about the bad guys, since I think there are some really cool and complex stories that get a lot of focus here in the show. Paige and Pavel offer the most interesting dynamics towards the main protagonist, and between each other. Paige, voiced by Emmanuel Shrieky, is loyal to Tesla and the cause in general, and is a skilled, level-headed fighter that does have a deeper side to her, rather than just being a weapon to the cause. Her relationship with Pavel, voiced by Paul Rubens, is that of a rivalry, where he wants nothing more than to rise in the ranks and outshine Paige any chance he can, since they are ranked the same, but he values her as lesser to him. But his ambitious and narrow viewpoints end up backfiring on him as long as Paige has been around. And clearly, out of the two, Paige shows so much more to her character rather than just being a bad guy. She has this whole relationship with both Beck and the Renegade. The way that there is this back and forth flowing conversation that often feels flirtatious during their fighting encounters, and eventually how her and Beck end up as a couple for a brief stint, possibly alluding to hope for Paige's character. Clue's involvement, like I said, is very minimal but impactful, especially with how the show comes to an end. Here, Clue is voiced by Fred Tatasciore, instead of Jeff Bridges reprising the role from the movies. But Fred does an amazing job bringing in the stoic, smug charisma the character is known for having in the public eye. He also has Dyson, voiced by John Glover, the highest ranking guard who is seen being this incredible force of muscle when needed. He's powerful, but I don't know, he just kind of creeps me out. Now, speaking of the end of the show and Clue's importance here before we get to Tron Legacy, what happened to the show? Where was all of this lore heading? What was in store for these characters and the full uprising against Clue?
We'll be right back to the series premiere of Tron Uprising. And now, back to the series premiere of Tron Uprising.
Unfortunately, Tron Uprising's fate wasn't something as incredible as the show itself was. I know we were able to really dig into the lore of the show and see how packed it truly is, but when you step back and see that it was only one season with a total of 19 episodes and that's it, it feels unfinished. Well, it is unfinished. But it also felt that way for a slew of reasons. The show was cut short of finishing where the story was heading, unless we are leaving things ambiguous and giving us a big gap of story that leads from the end of this series to Tron Legacy, but there was enough left unresolved and not bridged together that there shouldn't just be a hard cut where we leave the series. What stopped it? Well, simple answer, Disney did. But Disney was pushing hard for Tron to be a thing again. They had been sitting on this IP and wanted more than anything to establish it as a powerful franchise. They put some more time and money into Tron Legacy, which ended up doing okay at the box office, but not enough to present an actual future path for Tron, with Disney still being disappointed at its performance considering it a box office bomb. The show itself had all this potential to pick up some of the perceived slack through the audience on Disney XD, but despite the show being great or not, people were not tuning in. The viewership started off close to 2 million views for the premiere episodes, but fell closer to 500,000 for its second, often hanging around 300,000 viewers after that, never really finding its way higher than that again. Plus, then moving the show to an awful time slot on Mondays at midnight Eastern didn't do much to aid in gathering in viewers. People weren't interested in Tron, it seemed, or at least not given a reason to be interested in it. And that's unfortunately been the trend with Tron as of the past decade in some since Tron Legacy released. While there are some diehard fans of the property like myself, mainstream appeal for the franchise fails to grow with it. It just costs so much money to make, and for such little return viewership-wise, it's a shame. Disney was at first seemingly very confident with it all. The toy lines were coming out swinging for Tron and looked awesome. It's such an important factor that can keep anything afloat despite viewership numbers or box office return. Who wouldn't want these if you were into Tron? Well, apparently not a lot of people aside from me, as they quickly got put in the clearance sections. Whether it was a graphic novel or a game to go even further into building the Tron world to connect from the original all the way up to Tron Legacy, nothing ever stood out enough to work. I think within a week or two after the video game Tron Evolution came out, the game was heavily discounted and the collector's edition was already discounted all the way down to $30 because the sales were, well, not great. And I'm a part of the problem, that's when I bought it. But don't be mad at me for getting a deal, be mad at the lack of faith in the product from the company. But the biggest problem was the cliffhanger, the implications of what was to come next in the series to officially get us to Tron Legacy's timeline, where Tron needs the help from the Recognizer to keep him alive at the potential cost of him being fully corrupted and controlled under Clue, and having his mind completely wiped, or data completely wiped. But just in the nick of time, Beck is able to get Tron out safely with his mind still intact. Beck has a confrontation with his old friend, now corrupted enemy Cutler, who starts seeing a breakthrough over the controlling powers that be, and his body tries fighting back against the repurposing but can't fully beat it, resulting in some heartbreaking moments at the cost of destroying the giant Recognizer. It's a lot to take in, but that's why I loved the rich lore that this show had baked into its DNA. But disguised as Tron one more time, Beck starts the sparks of a revolution against Clue. As we hear the original Tron say, the uprising has begun. Clue's massive armada is shown flying into Argonne as he gives off a smirk about what's going to happen. And that's it. That's the end of Tron Uprising. Well, what the heck happens next? We know that in Tron Legacy, Clue is still around and basically all of the characters aside from Tron and Cora aren't there. And Tron in the movie is a corrupted version of Tron going under the name the Rinsler. What could have happened from this point to this point? There is a lot of story there not touched upon. Luckily, we can infer and speculate, but more episodes, a second season, something could have been extremely cool to see. A full-out revolution between the citizens in the city and Clue, how this revolution turns out, how Tron ends up getting captured and being shown off as killed in front of everyone, only to technically be under the control of Clue under a new name. All of that shown could have been so incredible to dig into, but it never happened. As the final episodes were coming out, one of the developers, Edward Kitsis, reacted to all the speculation of the show being cancelled, saying that he had no idea what the future would hold for the series, including in that the show though definitely needs more viewers, a clear sign that the show wasn't in the best spot it could be in. And at this point, most likely it was known that after the next couple episodes air, and nothing about that could be said publicly. The second life for the show really wasn't there either when it went to Netflix streaming for a year, and then several years later came back to streaming through Disney+, and that's where Tron has been left. Over the past decade, Disney has been trying to figure out what to do with the property. A Tron 3 movie has been rumored to be in the works for so long, going back and forth with having the director of Legacy attached, to then not being a direct sequel following Cora's life now outside of the grid, and as far as we know not being anything in relation to what happened in Legacy anymore, to then having Jared Leto starring as the main lead, and now, as of 2023, having the title Tron Ares and still starring Jared Leto. and now having a different director attached to it, as well as it seems that they are ready to move on it with production pretty quickly here and start shooting it later this year. While I will always be excited for more Tron anything, I am sad that as far as we know right now, that everything previously does not have a direct continuation, resolution, or tie into whatever Ares will be. But for that, we shall find out sooner or later. I just hope that moving forward, we don't forget the world that we built beforehand. As far as other Tron media to cover, over on my gaming channel, Jordan Fringe Gaming, I just put out a video on the Tron Evolution video game, so make sure to check that out to stay in the grid a little bit longer. Maybe being on YouTube or the internet in general is the grid for all of us. Maybe in reality, we are all in the grid created by another. Maybe we are no different than the ISOs. Define what it means to be alive, to be born. How do you know you're not just some string of code? Well, when you figure out what being human is, let me know your thoughts on Tron Uprising in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, like and subscribe. Later.